Welcome to East Main 101 Lesson 6. I'm your facilitator, City of Jackson Communications Director Kenneth Cummings. And for today's lesson, we have the Public Works Director. It's actually a new director, Austin Clark. Austin, thank you for being on Lesson 6.
Thanks for having me.
I know this might be a little tough for you because I know you don't do cameras.
I don't.
I'm kidding.
I don't.
This is going to be a real light conversational piece. As all of you know, this is just kind of just lessons, education on city government here in the city of Jackson, Tennessee. I'll first read off a bio of Austin Clark. Austin Clark is the Public Works Director for the city of Jackson. He has served as the City of Jackson Public Works Director since June 2023, so he's pretty fresh on. He has spent a decade in public service with license and experience in water treatment, wastewater treatment, sewer collection, water distribution, natural gas distribution, and construction of street and stormwater systems. In 2022, he was awarded the TAUD Roger Bower Young Professional of the Year Award. He's a veteran who served in the United States Marine Corps as an infantry rifleman with 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. He's the husband to a beautiful wife and father to 2 amazing children. As the Public Works Director, Austin oversees a staff of 100 employees and managers, supervisors, and direct programs and activities of public works in the functional departments of stormwater, traffic signs, traffic signals, street fleet maintenance, which is our city garage, health and sanitation and recycling, and our new 311 call center. Austin, thank you for being on Lesson 6 of East Main 101. You were actually one of my first to think about to actually be on this podcast because, for one, I knew that you wanted to get kind of the kinks out of being interviewed.
Right.
So we joke about how Austin is, he actually does love the camera. Try to put him on every once in a while for some of our press releases for anything happening in public works. Mm-hmm. So Austin, thank you again for being on. And your bio mentioned that you are a veteran. And first of all, I want to say thank you for your service to our country. I've also learned that there's no such thing as a former Marine.
Nope.
You are a Marine.
I am a Marine.
So you've been in the Marine. So how, as a Marine, did you get started in the world of streets and stormwater and public works?
Well, that's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like those two, government and then kind of DOD or United States Marine, that's two, they conflict with one another, right? So as a United States Marine, you're taught very early on, instant obedience to all orders, instant execution of orders, right? Mm-hmm. Local government is not the case. There are a whole lot of checks and balances that take place in local government that are frustrating. Obviously, a lot of obstacles you got to overcome from time to time, and anybody that knows me, that's worked around me, knows that sometimes I can get out over my skis a little bit. Sometimes, I kind of get ahead of folks because one thing that was kind of difficult to transition to from the military into the civilian world while working in local government is it's the process is just as important as getting to your end goal, right?
Right.
So, a lot of times you want to see issues in a straight line. Here's the issue, and here's how we're going to resolve it. And a lot of times that's impossible to do. The process between A and B is just as important as the end goal. So anyway, it's been a transition, but it's been a great transition. And to kind of lead on or lean on the backside of that. When serving in the military, like a lot of veterans, once I had left, I'd lost my mission. Mm-hmm. I no longer had, what's the best way of putting it? I guess you're looking for that sense of purpose, right? That you had while in the military. And just like a lot of folks, I struggled with it when I'd gotten out. A friend of mine had reached out to me and said, hey, there's an opening in our city that we were living in at the time. Would you be interested in coming on? And I thought, yeah, I'll give that a shot. At that time, I was going to school, working part-time jobs and things, and this was a full-time position. Just got married, expecting our firstborn, and college didn't pay very well, so I thought, man, I need to do something. And I was given the opportunity, and man, like a flip of a switch, I found my purpose again. Just from not having that mission to now being able to serve the public, right? It fulfilled that mission again and gave me something to be passionate about, and been here ever since.
That's awesome. So while you were in the Marines, did you work on anything like public works related, like stormwater and things like you're doing now? Or how did that happen?
I always kind of had a niche for problem solving, and I was always somewhat mechanically inclined. I remember my second deployment in Afghanistan. I was kind of put into a leadership position where I got to fortify our base and kind of make it a little more homier, try to keep the guys motivated as best as possible. And in order to do that, one thing that we had done, we had found an IED out around the local populace, and I'd brought some of the components back. I remember another unit had came in and visited us, and they were in tactical vehicles. I took the pump, the windshield wiper pump that cleans your windshield. Okay, I stole it off their tactical truck and wired it up to a radio battery and an IED pressure plate, so that we could walk in to a shower. That's what I was making, was a shower. I had a dog box, had a hose coming off of it, running this little motor, running down to that pressure plate, and up to the battery. And you could walk in and step on that pressure plate, which is a component of the IED, and water would start spreading out. So, I guess I had a niche for solving issues, but, maybe that's public works related, I don't know.
So from making your own shower to stormwater now. That's an interesting story. I wouldn't have ever guessed someone, in the military not actually doing something in that field while in the military and coming back out. So you didn't, other than the shower, you didn't do anything streets or stormwater or anything like that?
No. We were infantry guys. We were ground pounders.
Okay.
That was our role.
Wow. So from that into public works, now working for the city of Jackson, this public works director, I came on in 2019, and of course you started in 2023. There was no necessarily public works, but we do have departments that kind of encompassate with public works. And so one of the biggest things that is happening now is the 311 call center. In 2019, I do remember when the mayor, that was one of the things that he wanted to incorporate, where people could call or just report issues in the city, and he wanted to create 311. So I remember back in July of 2020, that was the first time I posted that the Ready 311 app is available for people to use. And it's had its kinks, it's had its setbacks, it's had its, moments of it's not working, to now we have a 311 call center where people can actually call that number and report city issues, and those issues from, potholes to tall grass and things like that. So as the new director of public works and kind of having that call center, just kind of talk about the call center and what it does, the benefits for the city.
Right. So, I think we've all been in situations where it's not necessarily the city. Maybe you're calling your physician's office or something, and you just keep getting passed around person to person and never seem to, you eventually might get to that person that can solve whatever issue that is.
Or a person at all.
Or a person at all, right. So that was the intention, I think, that the mayor's initiative was there to address. So instead of calling an entity within the city and then directing you to the department or passing you around to multiple people, now you make one phone call and you're talking to the end user. So you're talking to a professional right off the get-go that can take whatever issue you have, direct it to that department, and then facilitate the information coming from the status of the resolution of that issue, right? back and forth. So they're communicating with the department, taking that information, sending it to the customer, and back and forth until that issue is resolved. So it streamlines the entire process of customer service in the city.
And so I don't know if you hear that many cities that have a 311 center or just being able to call a number and talk to a person. That is a big deal. I've been to the center there. You got 3 employees working in there. Four employees working at 311 center. And now when they can call 311 from their mobile phones, and they're actually talking to someone who can direct them to who they need to go to, or just put the ticket in the system to make sure. And do they track all the way through from start to so if I call and say, hey, I have this issue, they'll get my information, like for instance my email, and they'll email me back and say, hey, this issue is being worked on, or this issue has been resolved.
Well, if you download the Ready 311 app, there's a section for your tickets where you can actively see communications between the 311 call center folks and the customer themselves. There's kind of like a chat box, I guess you would say, that they can enter information and kind of almost in real time the customer can see. There's also an internal box where 311 can be communicating with the department, but all that, I mean, it just streamlines everything. Honestly, I mean, it's the best way of communicating with folks. It's just 2024. Everybody has a phone, and it's readily available, simple to use, just a good service.
And so that Ready 311 app, and you can download that Ready 311 app at 311.JacksonTN.gov. I've used it, and I've recently used it just maybe the other day, and I just drove around and saw just a pile of, I think, tires, and I reported it, or just driving around and I see a pothole and I'll go back home or to report it, or if I get to my computer and I can report like a pothole that I saw and put the tag where that pothole was. And I got a notification say that we've got your information, and then I guess a few days later I get an email saying that this work order has been filled.
Completed.
So talk about how that benefits the city as a whole and our residents.
Well, right off the bat, it is kind of like instantaneous city representative or city employee attempting to solve that issue, right? I mean, it's good to know that I can pick up the phone and immediately speak to somebody, whatever issue that they may be calling about. Somebody is immediately working on it, right? So it's effective in that sense. Now, I guess the importance of it. Well, let's talk about generally what kind of information we're receiving first. Yeah. So the majority of the reports we get are potholes, and
I can believe that.
Yeah, and second to that are code violations, and some of that is residents needing to mow their properties, or maybe somebody's dumped trash on a vacant lot. It might be animal control issues. It's just any number of things, especially if you access it via the browser. It gives you a whole lot of resource. You can get really detailed. Not everybody that's reporting an issue knows directly what department it needs to be labeled, but they know if it's an animal issue. They know if it's a pothole. They have general information, but it's great across the board. Employees, I mean, they seem to enjoy it. All the departments that I have seen seem to enjoy it because it just streamlines the process. They're receiving work orders. They automatically see. The guys out in the field are getting those emails directly on iPads, you're getting it on their phone, you're getting it at your desk, behind your computer, whatever the case may be. It's just streamlining the process from the customer to the department and getting things resolved. It seems like at a faster pace.
Faster pace and more efficient, and the accountability part is huge.
It is.
Just to be able to see that issue that I have that I want to report, that it's being worked on, and I'm not just another person put to the side or prioritizing a friend over, just me as a regular citizen, an employee saying, oh, yeah, we'll take care of yours because you live on my street. No, we're going to take care of everybody who reaches out to us.
Right, everybody.
So that 311 app, Ready 311, like I say, you can download it at 311.JacksonTN.gov. Some of the issues that you can report are like animal issues. There's Christmas tree pickup around Christmas time. There's code violations. Illegal dumping, potholes, of course, which is, I think you said, one of the most that you get.
Absolutely.
Right-of-way mowing, stormwater issues, just a whole bunch of different issues that you can report as a citizen and can watch it, not necessarily in real time, but you'll be able to know when that issue has been resolved.
Right.
And like I said, the accountability part, if I put in a pothole ticket and I get an email saying that it's been filled, but I go back out and it's not, as a resident, I'm sure that probably that has happened maybe at the beginning when we were getting the kinks out of it. Mm-hmm. Now it's working, and it's working well. So some of this, I'm sure you brought some stats of some of the potholes and things like that. What are you seeing statistically how this is working?
Well, the communication has increased substantially across the board. We're receiving 130 to 140 calls a day within the department.
Per day
within the department. But that doesn't include the amount of tickets that people are submitting on their phones or going on the web browser or whatever the case may be. The department's been up and running since March, and we've already submitted just under 10,000 tickets.
Wow. That's just tickets, and then and that plus calls. That's very impressive. So I guess how long does it take, or does it depend on what the issue is as far as how long it takes to get it done?
It depends. There's code violations. Sometimes there's a process that goes along with that. If it's a pothole, those things can be filled relatively just within a day or two. Mm-hmm. Typically, when we have enough accumulated that we can justify going to buy lots of material, we'll get out there and replace those at one time. But codes violations, a lot of times those end up in court. Sometimes they take a length of time to fill or to complete, I guess you could say. So.
And we'll get a little more into this, but health and sanitation, that's under Public Works, correct? Mm-hmm. So of course there's the 311 app, and it's connected to another app that we have, and we'll have Leilani on at another lesson to get more in depth about this. But a lot of people, there's trash issues or issues related to waste management, trash issue, like your garbage can, maybe your wheels popped off. All of this can also be reported through the 311 app. Right. It's an amazing tool to have for a city, and for it to be 4.5 years in, and the amount of calls that you get, the amount of tickets that are already being reported, lets us know that our citizens are using this service, and it's a benefit to them. So one of the other things that's on the 311 app, one of the issues is stormwater. We hear about it. We see it when it's raining. When we say stormwater, those are like the pipes. When the rain comes down, the water has to go somewhere, and that water it goes into the stormwater drains. And so there was a big push, or before I got here in 2019, I had no idea of the rules when it came to drain pipes and things that are under citizens' homes. When we got here, there were a lot of people who say, well, these are the city's pipes. They need to come fix it. Mm-hmm. When I got here, I learned that's not the case. Can you tell us how that works? What's the difference between a pipe that's under my house versus a pipe that's under like a city street? Who's responsible, and why that's the case?
The city can't work off the city right of way or easements or public property in general. Anytime that we have an issue that might be located on private property, there's a whole lot of liability that goes in associated with it that we just can't do. Anytime that it's on, like I say, an easement or a right of way, that's no problem. That's no issue. We take care of those things.
Now, define right of way, because that was another thing that I had I thought right of way was me being able to walk across the street because I have the right of way. Mm-hmm. When a car needs to stop. If it's a crosswalk, I have the right of way. That's what I thought right of way was. When I got here, I learned it was something different. Kind of explain what that is.
Every single street in the city has a specific right-of-way distance, I guess you would say. From the center line, it's a certain amount of feet from that center line that is the city's responsibility, or the city's property, I guess you would say. That makes that public property down through there. And that's typically where you find your utilities.
Okay.
In most cases.
So let's say there's the center line, then you have a sidewalk, but between the sidewalk and the street and the sidewalk, there's a patch of grass. Would that patch of grass and the sidewalk be, and then would anything past the sidewalk, or?
In some cases,
Okay.
And that's kind of difficult to say. You'd have to be talking about a specific location. I might be able to say, be able to talk a little bit about it, but typically you can assume the sidewalk inward is all city right of way.
Okay. So if there is no sidewalk and there's like a utility pole, that's, of course, we have JEA and it's not necessarily ours, how far, or does it depend on how far from that utility pole to the property line of the house, how much of that is
I don't want to speak for JEA, but I would assume that they're setting power poles separating properties and at the point of the property line and the right of way.
Okay.
And generally, that's the way it's done. It keeps a uniformity down your street if you have overhead power or telephone or internet or whatever the case may be. But it's also a reference point for folks that live there, and then for us to know generally where those easements are.
Okay. And back to the stormwater. So talking about the public versus private, of course, you said we can't necessarily go on private property to fix. But people assume that those pipes weren't put down by them, so it should be the cities. Kind of explain how that works.
Look, I understand that frustration. There are folks that in certain subdivisions and communities here around town who purchase a house that's 15 feet, 20 feet from their adjacent neighbor, and in some cases there's a 50 or 60 inch pipe running right in between them. And if an issue were to develop on that pipe, it could take years before that develops. Until you're seeing it from the surface, and then when you see it, you're thinking, man, this is huge. This is a huge undertaking for us. We need to call the city and have them come fix it. Well, if it's on private property, we can't touch it. Now, that goes back to some of my frustrations, I guess you'd say. When a subdivision, when a developer comes in and they want to develop a specific area, and that goes through the entire process of planning and engineering, signing on, they'll bring in their plans, and engineering will say, hey, we want to see your stormwater system, how you intend on diverting water throughout this community. And they see it, if the plans are good, they approve it. In the past, I don't think that's the case anymore. In the past, I know in some cases that's the last time a city employee would lay eyes on not necessarily the plans themselves, but the work being conducted. And I'm not letting it defeat the contractors, but I think sometimes corners can be cut. Okay. I think sometimes there could be poor installation or and things of that nature, but after a year's time of the development of the subdivision, it now belongs to the city. It's our responsibility to maintain that infrastructure that was installed.
Now, when you say it's after a year, so it's up to the city, but that's not
Correct.
Necessarily the pipes that are under the homes, or does that mean we have to maintain? That's the part where I guess a lot of people are confused. You hear them say, well, it's now the city's responsibility to take care of it. Well, if the city can't come onto private property to fix it, what do you mean it's the city's responsibility?
Right. We own the responsibility in the public property, not the private property.
Gotcha.
So at that right of way, that's the end of our responsibility.
Gotcha.
I know probably under different administrations in the past, they might have allowed people to go on private property. I've given my opinion, and I know Mayor Conger feels the same way. That that's liability that the city honestly has no business being in, because anything that we touch on private property, you own it from then on.
Gotcha.
If you destroyed a fence, trying to replace a stormwater pipe, or you damaged a lawn or somebody's irrigation, or whatever the case, endless. You hit their house, whatever the case may be, you own it from then on. And that's a liability that nobody needs to have. including us.
And you brought up stormwater pipes that, look bad or whatnot. And I remember you took me, it was somewhere on Airway, showed me the infrastructure of some of our stormwater.
Yeah.
It was bad. And I mean, if you want to check it out, there's pictures on our Facebook page. You can look at those to see how bad it was. But I mean, it's as if no one cared about what the infrastructure under the city looks like as far as stormwater. Of course, regular citizen, myself included, water's just going, personally, before I got into this role of knowing more about city infrastructure, I just thought all the water went somewhere, and I knew sewer water and stormwater, it couldn't have mixed some kind of way. But stormwater itself, you see the drains on the side of the sidewalk, those lead somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it's not just one big pipe. There's a lot under the city. And we're now going through an assessment to determine where all these pipes are, how bad or how good they are. Mm-hmm. Talk about why we're doing this assessment, what's the point of it, and how it'll ultimately benefit the city in why we need to do this.
Okay. Well, let's back up to 1976.
1976.
That's the last stormwater assessment project that had been conducted in the city.
1976.
1976. At the time, I think the population was around 40,000.
Okay. So it was much smaller city.
A much smaller city. I think the city itself, city limits was
I think North Parkway.
30, 40 square miles, something like that. Well, at that time, the assessment, I think, determined that there was just under 20 miles of stormwater, as we will call it, main, in the ground throughout the city. And it was going to cost at that time something like $15 million to repair it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 50 years ago.
I can only imagine.
Today, 70,000 people is population, 60 square miles of city. And just imagine typically stormwater piping has like a 30-year shelf life. So, or not shelf life, but just life in general. Once it's installed, typically 30 years is what you're going to get out of it. Well, it's been 50 since that assessment. So if that $15 million wasn't invested then, just imagine what that infrastructure looks like now. And now it's, I'm scared to speculate how many miles are in the ground now. Mm-hmm. But just think about the development of the city of Jackson over the course of that amount of time.
Right.
It's a lot of infrastructure, right?
It's a lot of infrastructure.
So in order for us to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars and to spend them in a way that, number one, is going to be effective, but to stretch it as much as possible, we need to lay the groundworks or develop a plan that makes sense, right? That justifies the money that we're spending on it.
Right.
As we all should. That's where this stormwater assessment project comes in. It's a $9.3 million ARPA grant that will assess the conditions of all the assets in the city. That's everything from 15-inch stormwater pipe that's running underneath driveways to concrete culverts that are 10 feet in diameter.
Well, let's back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
the assessment would cost how much?
$9.3 million.
And back in 1976, you said to do an assessment or to...
No, to fix the infrastructure in 1976 was going to cost $15 million. Just to identify, find, map, and conditions assess the current system we have is 2/3 of that amount.
So 50 years ago, if they had done the assessment, probably would have cost less, and then fixing it $15 million. Yeah. Again, it sounds like either nobody cared or didn't think it was a big issue, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Right. Wow.
It's a complicated issue, right? Anytime we're talking about infrastructure, obviously there's a lot of cost associated with it. But this is a infrastructure, number one, it's critical to have. You have to have it, especially in the city of Jackson that is so widespread and flat, right? But it's a piece of infrastructure that's never seen hardly. You know, the only thing that most people know about stormwater at all are those metal grates at the edge of the road up against the curb and gutter, right?
Right.
That water goes in there and it just magically disappears.
Go somewhere.
But, you know, we've got stormwater guys right now working right here in downtown on a hand-laid brick pipe that runs right underneath downtown, big enough that they're standing up inside of, that was probably put in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Wait, a brick pipe?
Hand-laid brick.
The one that we went to, it was like metal.
That was metal.
And it was, I mean, it's
gone.
Gone, essentially gone. So, of course, metal, I don't know whichever one has a longer shelf life, metal or brick, but the metal one seems like it's back when it was there. It flowed as it should.
Right.
But a brick laid one, I just don't see how that would work.
Well, it's held up this long.
Since the 1800s.
Well, I'm assuming.
Okay.
I've been told that we found stamped bricks that were from 1909.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
And so, what this assessment, it started off, I think we did a pilot in South Jackson just kind of to see how it works. What have you seen since we first started? What have you noticed about our stormwater system? Are there any good spots left?
It's widespread. To be honest, you know, the majority of the issues that we're seeing is all with galvanized pipe. You know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was readily accessible. It was cheap. Unfortunately, it's supposed to last 30 years. If we get 20, 25 out of it, we're lucky, to be perfectly honest. The standards have kind of changed now. You know, we recommend folks for new construction either be dual wall plastic or concrete pipe, just because it'll withstand the abuse and the elements that it's in for a longer duration of time.
So talk about how we're able to, what is this assessment say? What are we doing? Is somebody going down there to walk through the way that we did, or is there something that will go through all these pipes? And also, how do we not have this already? Do we even know where all the pipes are? Just kind of explain that.
Good question.
Okay.
We do have maps, especially of new construction, things that have took place in the last 15, 20 years. We have some maps on some of this stuff, but none of this stuff is digital, right? This is 2024. We're in the digital age.
Right.
And, you know, the best thing that we could do during this assessment, you know, the intention is obviously to understand the condition of our system. That way we know how to budget in the future in order to repair these things, right? But kind of first and foremost, we need that general information to know where these assets are out there, right? So that the assessment is first to find these assets, to identify both diameter, material, depth. You know, is it silted in? Is there a specific amount of that pipe cover, percentage of that pipe covered up with dirt or concrete or whatnot? And then the conditions of itself, you know, is it rusted out? Is it undersized? It's information that we can all then put inside of a GIS, you know, geolocation, digital format where you can pull it up on your phone, you can pull it up on an iPad, you can pull it up on your computer, whatever the case may be, while you're in the field, and be able to identify and locate all your assets. So if you were to make a 311 ticket and say, directly in front of my house, I have a sinkhole developing. I don't know what it is. Can y'all come look at it?
No, I could in front of my house or
wherever.
Okay,
wherever. I could answer your question. I don't know that I can necessarily work on it, but you know, you could do that and us be able to pull up in real time the assets that's in that area and determine pretty quickly whether that was a stormwater issue.
So have you noticed any certain areas that so far that are worse off than others? Of course, I know the new developments, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, to be doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Are there any certain areas within the city that you've noticed that are just like, if we could do it yesterday, it would be done?
Honestly, it's so widespread at this point, I can't narrow it down to a specific location. East, west, north, south, central, it doesn't matter.
But we are doing the work to at least find this so that we can, at some point, fix it.
Right. Well, I mean, right now what we're doing is taking in 311 tickets, work order tickets, prioritizing those based on the severity, or whatever. If it's threatening public property, if it's threatening the public itself, or private property, whatever the case may be, that's how we're prioritizing those things. At least when this condition assessment is finished, we'll have it in black and white, saying, here is the most critical, severe piece of infrastructure you need to replace now, and so on and so forth, all the way down the list of every asset that's out there.
So about how long, from assessment to we've got all these stormwater pipes fixed, how long is, in the nutshell, how long would that take?
Well, I don't know. I would hope it was like a 10 or 15-year plan, because I have heard numbers upwards of $150 to $200 million to make the repairs needed. So I would hope that we could obviously find grant funding for things like that.
Well, I mean, I had a feeling that would cost a lot.
Yeah.
But as far, I think of the one that we went to and where it was, how you would have to go in and do whatever, tear the road up to get pipe out, put a new one in. How long, based just on that one, how long would that take to fix?
An entire day at least.
Okay, so fixing everything after this assessment, just a guesstimate, how long do you think that would take?
With the 9 people that we currently have in stormwater to make all those repairs, all of them be retired before we got done.
But just, again, the fact that we're finally doing something about this, because, I mean, the structure of our city, it's important because more people are moving in with everything that's happening around and in West Tennessee. We want to make sure that this water is going where it's supposed to go and not just sitting, creating more issues. So the fact that we're doing this assessment, it's truly benefiting the city and the residents.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we would all want our streets freshly paved from end to end, every street in the city. But if you're not fixing the infrastructure underneath them, what's the investment itself?
So if we fix the streets, next thing you know,
and the stormwater pipes are falling in. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's unpopular, but it is critical infrastructure, and luckily we're doing something about it.
I guess that's the best thing to hear, is that we're doing something about it. Because again, if I didn't work for the city, this is something I wouldn't even think about. Right. I just, again, know that it's raining, the water's going somewhere. But if the water's not going somewhere and it's flooding on my street, something is wrong. Right. I don't know what's wrong, but the fact that we're going in trying to figure out what's wrong. I remember when I moved here, Bemis area out by where the mill was, I mean, every time it rained, it would be something. But even going to that, some streets, they flood. Is there something that the public can do to assist with making sure that water is flowing right? If I'm living somewhere and I see a drain pipe that's not draining right, is there something that I can do? Of course, I want to call the city to make sure it's right, but is there something that I could do to alleviate, make sure that that drain is the water's going where it's supposed to go?
Well, I mean, if residents chose to, if they had a storm drain, maybe right outside of the front of their yard, or as the road meets their drive, whatever the case may be, if they wanted to get out there and clean those things off before a rain event, they're welcome to. If they want to create a 311 ticket and have us do it, that's fine too.
Okay.
That's one way we could help, but it's ultimately about communication, right? There's 70,000 residents in the city, and there's a total of 10 folks inside of stormwater, and that includes myself. So the more communication we have with the folks that we serve, and the more information we can receive, the better we can react to some of that stuff, prioritize and get it done.
So it is a twofold thing. I can report it. I'm living here. I want the city to do what the city does, or I can actually take my own initiative and, hey, I know it's about to rain. That drain is clogged up. It's probably going to flood. Let me do what I can to clean it up. But again, I
be
can
more
call
than
the city.
happy to let,
Right.
yeah,
I can still
let
call the
folks
city to do it. So you can still call the city
Yeah.
to come clean that drain. You don't have to do it. But if you see it, we have, like you said, 70,000 people in the city. It's a handful of you all working in the public works, the stormwater side of it. We can do our part as citizens to help clean out just the I'm not going to say minor, but it's just that one drain. There are other areas that need to be serviced, but as a citizen myself, I can go out and help the city by cleaning up.
Absolutely.
But again, if I want to make a 311 ticket and I don't want to do it, I can do
That's
that.
fine too.
So that 311 app, again, it covers a multitude of things, including storm drains, storm water, things like that. So in your opinion, this assessment, do you think it's working as far as the mapping and knowing where all these issues are?
The data collection so far, oh yeah, it's absolutely useful.
So that the data collection, that's a important thing to have, so you can, like you said, see it in black and white.
Well, you can't start until you have a start line, right?
That is true, and you can't finish until you actually start. So that stormwater assessment, it's again, like I said, when I got here in 2010, that's something that I wouldn't even think about. But to know that we're actually out here doing what we need to do to keep our infrastructure to where it needs to be as we're working on, and it's going to take a while. Over 5 years, over 10 years, just to clean out just a certain area of it. So I'm grateful for what we're doing now to alleviate this issue, take care of this issue before it gets worse, because it could get worse if we don't do anything.
If we do nothing about it, it will guarantee be worse.
And we don't need the city of Jackson going into a big sinkhole. We don't need that.
No, we don't need that.
So public works, again, it encompasses a whole lot of different departments, from health and sanitation to streets, traffic signs, and signalization. There's a lot of cool things happening in public works. One of the street department, I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but they have a lot of machinery. So the kid in me just enjoys to see all the things that's going on. As a city employee, I talked to Johnny Weddle, and we'll have him on at some point. We have a new kind of this small paving machine or milling machine. Mm-hmm. So I was out there just like a kid watching, getting pictures, and I asked him, I was like, hey, can I try this? He was like, yeah. I tried it. It's so cool. It is. It's such a cool machine that we have. And we can talk about the street department again. Like I said, we'll have Johnny on later, but it's public works. You see what's going on in the street department. Kind of talk about some of the cool new things that we have in the street department. We'll get into other new updates within public works. But,
well, you're talking about specifically about the milling machine.
Yeah, that small milling machine that we have.
So what we utilize that small milling machine for is repairing of potholes and street cuts and things like that. The surface of the street, the integrity of the surface of the street, I guess I should say, is only as strong as the base that it rests on, right? So a lot of times potholes are reported. We go out, we fill the pothole. A month later, it's washed right back out. It's frustrating for folks. That milling machine, it gives us the abilities to go in, mill up the entire damaged area, and be able to put back a surface. Well, let me go back. You're able to mill out down past the troubled issue, I guess, that is preventing that asphalt from holding up. And then once you make your repair, you have a more permanent fix.
That's
looks a lot more presentable also to have a square cut than it does just this random hole in your street.
Right, and I remember when we got that one, when I posted about it, I talked about how we have like a 3-tiered pothole street thing for the city, because I know repaving a whole street, that's a whole other issue, a whole other deal, a whole other different department. But the 3-tiered system, we got patching potholes. Then we have that infrared machine, which is a pretty cool machine that we have. And then we have now this new milling machine, which actually cuts and makes a more aesthetically pleasing cut in the road. Right. So that's one of the cooler things that we have in the street department. But some of the other things that I learned about, we have a kind of a new robot in the groundskeeping department. or are there any other cool things happening within Public Works, within the entire Public Works division?
Right. Well, the mayor always harps on us about efficiencies and effectiveness within our departments, right? Stretching that dollar as much as we can, right? Well, if you've ever seen groundskeeping's robot, it goes out and paints like their athletic fields, right? So their soccer fields and baseball fields and stuff. It's an awesome little thing to watch. I mean, they're just out there with their phone or their laptop and just this little guy is just going and doing its thing, you know. And he had asked us, you know, what do you think about robotic mowers? There's some other cities that are utilizing them. So myself and groundskeeping, RC groundskeeping, we had got together, and there's been a couple of companies that's came out and demoed for us. And the intention, obviously, you know, City of Jackson is not, you know, unlike any other small business or corporation when it comes to finding employees.
Right.
We got open positions all day, every day at the HR department on the website, right? So we struggle to find folks to fill all of our positions. This potentially could be a way that we could fill the void by utilizing technology, right? So instead of, for instance, 3 individuals needing to go to North Park to mow, one person could have 3 robotic mowers and just turn those guys loose, and they're out there mowing soccer fields or whatever the case may be while that individual is out mowing, or out weed eating a fence line or something like that. It's definitely something we're interested in. And now, obviously, there's an upfront cost associated with it, but over the long term,
Essentially pays for itself.
I mean, it's paying for itself. One employee is able to do the work of 3, and you know, if he's out there weed eating while those other 3 mowers are mowing, technically it's the work of 4.
You know, we had Zach Polk on for lesson 4 talking about purchasing. We mentioned this about how we're not necessarily trying to take away from humans doing what they have to do, but we talked about how there still needs to be a person to fix these machines, a person pressing the button to make sure that these mowers are going the right direction. If it gets off track, somebody's there. So we talked about that during the purchasing lesson. These machines that we're having, it again makes it more efficient for time management. Like I said, I can be weed eating while this robot is out cutting the grass for me. That's just such a cool thing to have. I'm looking forward to going out with RC to see how that robot works. Have you seen it in action?
It's awesome.
So what have you seen it do so far?
It was painting a soccer field when I was out there. It was just a guy standing there with his iPad, and this thing was just painting lines. Just, I mean, as perfect as you could. I mean, a human could not have painted these lines as straight as they were.
So of course you got to program it to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to. But wow, so that's
there is some setup process to it, yeah. But I mean, to push a button and it goes out and does the work of what 2 people have to do, you know, pulling strings and whatnot, trying to get straight lines. I mean, it eliminates it all.
So this robot is just right now for fields, or will it be at some point maybe for streets or
potentially for streets as well? We're looking into it. Just like the robotic mowers, I think they're very useful. I think they're great. I think the technology may not quite be where we want it to be yet. The specific mower that I had in mind, where I gave that example, you can't be outside of like 500 feet from it. Okay. But you can initiate 3 mowers at one time with 1 kill switch. So if you were mowing 3 soccer fields at one time, you would have to be at that center field for all 3 of them to work. And you know, I think about North Park, it's so spread out, that would almost be an impossibility for you to be within that distance of it so that those things continue doing what they're doing. So there's some limitations, but it's something to look into. And I think as the technology kind of continues to improve, I think it's a no-brainer.
And so, and talk about, I guess, the public works, it's a division that kind of encompasses, like I said, different street department, H&S. Talk about the teams that you have there and how they do their job and the morale there. What is it like over at 180 Canal Cove? As the director of the department, what have you seen out of them as teams in street department H&S? Well,
first, I would ensure or reassure the public that, man, they've got great people working for them. I mean, the directors and superintendents with the leadership of those departments, professionals, man, experienced, and every aspect of the responsibility of the department. And the folks working for them it's a representation of the leadership that's there. Good folks working in public works.
Yeah.
You want to talk about some of the responsibilities within the department? Is that what you're saying?
Like streets and H&S, things like that.
Yeah. So streets maintains all of our state routes, to include sections of I-40 between I think exit 82 and 85, something like that, or the right-of-ways throughout the interstate. All of our medians, whether that's Pleasant Plains, Ridgecrest, down in the Bemis area, Parkway. They obviously repair our potholes and repair our streets. They also construct our ADA compliant sidewalks. We have an entire construction crew who pour concrete almost every single day. It could be driveways at fire stations, ADA compliant sidewalks in downtown. And these are just professional guys that can get out there, get after, and get it done. There's a whole lot of experience, but also a whole lot of responsibility within that department alone of the things that they maintain out here. Our traffic sign department, they're the ones that's maintaining all the signage in the in the city. Excuse me. Every piece of aluminum that is stuck to a stick out here in this city, that's what they're maintaining.
So from like stop signs to street signs,
everything,
to crosswalk signs, things like that.
Right, and also all of our painting. So. Okay. Especially in our parking lots, we do our best to try to contract out main streets, the lines and stuff that's painted on there. We typically try to contract those things out, but like our parking lots, if you'll notice in a lot of our parks now, all those lines have been freshened up for the most part. Some areas of downtown, and a lot of these concrete parking bumpers that you see, they're all responsible for that.
Those are new in the parks.
Try to eliminate some burnouts and donuts.
They actually, it makes parking easier. I think over to TR White, the parking lot over there. For a long time, it was just a free for all.
Yeah.
Now it's organized parking. You know where you're going to park, and you're going to be able to get out whatever time you need to. Really does, and that's street department.
That's the signs department.
Signs department. Okay.
Yeah. Now our traffic signal department, they maintain all of our signals within the city. I think there's like 127 intersections. You would assume there's 4 sets of lights at each one of those intersections. You do the math. There's a lot of infrastructure out there maintaining.
Speaking of math, but not really math, if you ever get a chance to see a traffic light in person, they're not as small as you think. Those lights, the first time when I got here, one of my first pictures that I took was our guys over here downtown replacing the lights that made them a little more, they weathered the storm a little better. They were not swinging as much. And when I walked up close to one of those stoplights, the red light was almost chest high.
Yeah.
And I'm 6'3". Those lights are huge.
It's like 3 or 4 foot tall.
Wow. I didn't know that. just driving around, you don't think that they're big, but our guys maintain those lights.
Yep.
Wow. So also another one of the signal areas, Ridgecrest and Henderson.
Yep.
Big deal, 4-way stop. A lot of people were upset about it, but a lot of people more people were probably happy about it, and it's done its job. That's one of the things
those on Henderson Road, I know are happy about it.
And that's one of the things that we as a city maintain,
right.
And the lines and the lights and everything. So traffic sign signalization, street department, and the street department has, the concrete side and
construction side and then the maintenance side.
Construction and maintenance. So public works, I've talked about this. Probably people are tired of me saying back when I got here in 2010. A lot of these things that I knew the city had to maintain because it's city government, but seeing it in person, all the things that we maintain, and I've learned and I've seen the passion that our street department, all of our employees have, especially those who are out working to make sure that the city either looks good, is drivable. The passion that they have when they do the work, it's amazing to see.
They're great people.
And
They are. They care about the quality of work that they're doing too,
Right.
So
and especially,
awesome.
and I just want to give a shout out to the street department, all the departments, but street department, especially when it's iced out. They're up 4 o'clock in the morning, especially if the ice is overnight. They're up 4 o'clock in the morning, wanting to make sure these roads are as drivable as they can be. I've been up with them, and they're up. They don't complain. They get out. They do the job, and next thing you know, these streets are as drivable as they can be. 'Cause, I mean, 3 inches of ice versus ½ inch of ice. It's two totally different things.
Right.
But they're out there doing the work.
That's right.
And
All conditions.
it's amazing to see them doing that. So, Austin, there's a lot to talk about in public works, and so we'll have some of the actual department heads from those departments, like Leilani from H&S, and try to have Johnny or Percy on for street department to talk more about what they do. But I appreciate you coming on to kind of give an overview of public works.
My pleasure.
Thanks
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for getting over your fear a little bit.
Did I?
Yeah, I think you did. You're not as red as you.
I'm not as red.
So, of course, East Main 101 is like education. So I have at the end of each session, we have a pop quiz where I just ask 3 questions of my guest about them, what they like, or anything such as that. So your 3 questions. Your first question is, during your service as a Marine, not a former Marine, as a Marine during your service, what was your favorite country to visit?
We got to train in Australia one time for about a month and a half.
Okay.
It was great. It was awesome.
What part of Australia? I've heard horror stories about Australia, but as far as like the animals and the big, huge spiders that are up on the wall, like what part of Australia and what was your favorite part of it?
I think it was named Townsend or something like Townsend, Australia. We were out there training with the Royal Australian Army, and it was cool. It was awesome. Those are some.
About what age were you like fresh
20,
in?
No, I would have been probably 22, something like that.
Wow. Yeah. So the culture over there, how different is it versus where we are now in the South?
Way different. Way different. First of all, they speak English, but I can't understand them. It's just a totally different accent that I couldn't pick up. Yeah. But great people. I mean, loved Americans, and just our little bit of time there, we ended up loving those folks.
So no big spiders or anything like that.
Literally everything is trying to kill you in Australia. Everything. There are creepy, crawly creatures everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe I don't like that aspect.
Don't go to Australia.
Don't go to Australia.
No, I'm kidding. I might at some point. I might visit, but maybe just wear a big suit so nothing can bite me.
Bubble.
There you go.
There you go.
So, all right. Question number 2. Saying about that you have 2 kids. What is your favorite activity to do with either both or individually?
We like to travel. We like adventures, like experiencing things together, I guess, and it's fun being out there with those guys and seeing their little eyes light up and stuff when you're experiencing new things and just spending time with them.
Have you ever? For me, there's the kid in me still exists. Like I can sit up in the morning and eat Frosted Flakes and watch cartoons on a Saturday morning. So the kid in me still exists, and your kids, as kids, have you brought them to work to see some of the machines that we have?
Not yet. I'm going to.
Okay.
But
so I know we also sometimes have like touch-up truck, things like that, where kids can actually go. I was just curious to know if they.
I will do that.
Okay. I was just curious to know if they have an interest in what Dad does, working with the big machines and things like that.
They have somewhat knowledge of what I do, but they think that I'm obviously something. I'm some superhero, I guess you would say, in their mind. But
I mean, your dad.
Well, I'm
gonna get there at some point.
Right.
So
That's
September.
true. You are. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm looking forward to being a super dad to my kids. And number 3, we talked about this, and what you like to do and listen to. Heard you have a favorite podcast. So other than East Main 101, C.D. Jackson's podcast, what is your favorite podcast to listen to?
I listen to a lot. Probably the Sean Ryan show. He's a Tennessean,
Okay.
Retired Navy SEAL, CIA operator, and he brings on a lot of veterans to kind of tell their stories and talk about their traumas and stuff, just to kind of let folks know, you're not alone, and give people support as they need to, or as they can.
So he's a Navy SEAL?
He's a Navy SEAL and former CIA operator.
Wow.
So
what are some of the, what's your favorite, I guess, topic that he just does it as a...
anything involving Iraq or Afghanistan, just because I kind of lived during the era. I got to be over there around that time frame, and sometimes they mention things that I might remember, I guess, during that time frame, and it's just interesting. It's good to hear.
Awesome. So that's your second favorite other than East Main 101?
Of course.
Of course. So, Austin, again, thank you for joining us for East Main 101. I appreciate you coming on. So it'll probably be a while before I have you back. So get to
take a rest.
Get a rest before you come back in front
settled.
of the camera again. But again, thank you for coming on. What you do for Public Works and the transition I've seen in how they've been efficient, but just kind of having someone to just kind of help with the process of the efficiency going on in our Public Works department or division. I mean, it's a great thing to see, great thing to have, great thing to know that the city we're doing what we need to do to make sure that our public works.
Right.
Because that's what you are. You're the Public Works Director.
Like
It's a play on word.
Like that.
Dad jokes, got to get them out soon. So, Austin, again, thank you. So for our homework for East Main 101, Lesson 6, you should visit our website, 311.JacksonTN.gov. Once you go there, you'll get a prompt to download the Ready 311 app. If you don't want to download it, it's still available on our website. You can fill out a bunch of different city issues that you have, from traffic to street signs to potholes, of course, to a bunch of other different things, from animal issues to code violations. Visit our website, 311.JacksonTN.gov. Fill out a ticket or just visit and let us know in the comments that you browsed around that website. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media channels. Like, subscribe, and share our videos from East Main 101. Again, thank you, Austin, for coming on. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
And be sure again to subscribe. Visit our website, eastmain101.JacksonTN.gov. And until then, until next week, class dismissed.